Welcome to Cincinnati Talks. We're the two disc jockeys from Cincinnati. We talk Cincinnati all day, all hours.
All hours, all. How long do you think you could have a podcast about Cincinnati before you ran out of stuff to talk about?
300 episodes.
Yeah, I guess so, right?
Yeah, I mean,
our podcast is, I guess, about nothing.
yeah, and then we've managed to turn nothing into how many episodes have we had?
About close to 60.
Yeah, we've turned nothing into 60 episodes. And so in a way, we're one of the best podcasts of all time.
But nothing is kind of more places to go than if we could only talk about Cincinnati. You could spend hours and hours on the Reds, on the Bengals, on the dividing line between Kentucky and Ohio.
Oh, yeah,
right?
There'd be probably a multi-part series about that.
Yeah.
There'd probably be a 10-episode series, a debate.
That's what some YouTubers are good at, is like John Boyce is a sports documentarian, and he can kind of focus on really stupid topics, not just sports. I told you about that thing with the mattresses. Like, he can talk about kind of really innate, asinine? Yeah, kind of subjects, and really make it interesting. And I like that we don't do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we talk about the big topics and make them boring.
Yeah. And I think it's because we have a general lack of interest.
Yeah, we talk about some big topics, and then we're like, well, I don't really have that much. Let's move on to something else, because I don't really care that much.
Do you ever, I don't know, I think sometimes this is like a fake crisis I'll give myself, but sometimes I'm like, I feel like I'm not, interested in things.
Yeah, I feel that way all the time. I feel very, one motivated by one thing.
Yeah. Which, I don't want to have a stand-up conversation, but I guess you think about it because you're thinking of things to talk about.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and then I think about my interest, and they change all the time, and I think I am a curious person. I do like to learn things. But it's like right now I'm reading that book about brains. I'm trying to figure out my own anger problems.
You solved them, right?
No, not yet.
Oh.
At the moment, I like listening to Outlaw Country. I like the Grateful Dead, but it's just like you just look, and I don't know. Sometimes you're like, I don't think I'm that interested of a person, which I think is just like a depression thing.
Yeah, I bounce around a bunch.
Yeah,
I I'm a dilettante. I don't.
What does that word mean?
It's like you're just you're enthusiastic in a very shallow way.
But do you think that's true, though? Do you think you're shallow in your interests? Because I think you have a pretty, deep fascination with, writers and even just the concept of story building. And, even we talk a lot about Tim Heidecker's On Cinema at the Cinema because you're a big fan of that. And you have a recall that is, really sharp. You have a recall of, that entire series. And I think of
I've
most
been rewatching it, too.
I think you have just, a good memory, too.
I remember at one point I remember I was doing an open mic and somebody asked me to guess the lineup, and I just nailed it. To be like, do you remember this lineup from last week? And for some reason I just knew everyone that went up.
Yeah. I mean, you're very good at remember. So I mean, you seem pretty interested in stuff.
No, I mean, I will get interested in books books and comedy the only consistence in my life of this is something I'm always interested in. I always flip around to I'll be really into television for a month, or I'll be really into old comic strips. I remember I've had a couple old comic strips periods, but what was interesting about those is all I did was learn about old comic strips. I would buy Crazy Cat and Gasoline Alley and shit like that. Never looked at them. I've not read any Crazy Cat, which people say is the greatest comic strip ever.
Do you think? Because sometimes I feel like this. It's do you think you have more so a greater interest in the acquisition of knowledge on things, and that's why you bop around and move from stuff and don't hyper focus on one thing?
I always think about Umberto Eco. I used to be a big. I would collect books. I'd like to collect books, any part thing, and because I moved to LA, I don't have space for it. So all these like, there's like probably 1,000 to 2,000 books just in my parents' like just around,
Hmm.
and I have no way to get them. Uh,
What if you just shipped them here and bought shelves
well, my space isn't big enough.
for like a few shelves like that?
No, yeah, I don't have enough space.
Hmm.
But Umberto Eco said something that he had tens of thousands of books, and so many people ask him if he read all of them, and it's like, no, this is your study, like this is where you study,
Yeah.
like your room for all the books.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me. If I had a bunch of money, like, and was able to have like a home, one of the first things I would do would definitely be building a study.
Yeah,
And I would take like this shelf of books, which I've read, maybe 80% of, but then I would buy like 10,000 more.
yeah,
And then you just have your own library. I think the
Yeah.
thing is you just don't have to go to the library anymore.
John Waters has a fuck ton of books. He's got like he's got about 10,000 to 15, I think.
And yeah, you also want something where like, your grandson comes in and asks a question and then you get on the wood ladder and you go to section B18 and then you go, well, this is a book I have on dinosaurs.
You go to section B18 and you're like, all right, here's the encyclopedia of butts.
I think that
my grandson was asking about farting.
Yeah, and I think that idea has fallen away with Google because it's like you don't know everything on Google, but you have Google. And so that's the idea of a study, is like, I'm not going to buy this dinosaur book and then read it immediately. But if I ever have a question about dinosaurs, I will then get on my wooden ladder, climb up 2 stories of books, and take down this dinosaur book and then find out what I need to know.
Google has destroyed the internet has destroyed free thought, I think. I think what you're supposed to do is you read a bunch of books, you read like the history of philosophy, and you use the tools you learn to basically take all of that knowledge and synthesize it into your own view. And then I think a lot of people, they will Google Nietzsche and then they'll be like, this is what I think.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to do that.
No, I think it makes people trust themselves less because we kind of buy into the idea that it's like, well, Google and the internet has the answer. And sometimes that can be true of like, how big is the sun?
Yeah.
And then you can go look up how big the sun is and then you can know that. But especially when it comes to something like philosophy, or like, I think sometimes people will try and, bring an objective approach into art.
Yeah.
Where they're like, what's the best, film noir to watch? And it's like, well, that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them and you should just watch all of them. Maybe a lot of people would say The Maltese Falcon and it's good and you might like it. And maybe you'll watch all of them and still think The Maltese Falcon. But that doesn't really matter. It's like a useless question. But I think,
by the way, if you're watching, it's The Third Man. That's the best, is The Third Man.
So that's the best. And that's also a thing, is if people were massive fans of this podcast, they might hear that and then, as hard as they try, have a hard time to not like
The Third Man.
The Third Man. Because I do
Which
that.
is a perfect movie.
Because I'm like kind of my dad's son, where like a lot of my interests are just his interests. And sometimes he'll say something like, oh yeah, like that's my favorite, like his favorite band is a Grateful Dead. And like, as hard as I try, my favorite band is a Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And that'll probably never change. And I know I like the Grateful Dead. I know I think they're very good. I enjoy listening to them. I'll probably listen to them for the rest of my life. If I wasn't his son, I probably would have found them somehow. But I think him being my father, saying they're my favorite band, just sort of built a wall. That's like, well, I agree.
I don't think I have any shared interests with my dad. Like Pussy is like the big shared interest, I think.
Do you ever think it works in a reverse sense of how like your interests are still led by being the negation of his interests?
I guess so.
Like maybe you're,
My dad's smarter than me, I think. Like just by talking to him. I think he's a smarter guy inherently.
Yeah.
But I don't think he cares as much about learning.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of can answer the question right there of like, you see your dad as like an obviously intelligent person who's able to recognize patterns and make connections, but he's never been interested in the acquisition of knowledge.
Yeah,
So then what do you go out and do? You read a ton of books.
I
And
guess
I
so.
think you're
Yeah,
really interested in learning about things, you know?
I guess so.
I mean, you're a pretty good guy to talk to about art. You have a pretty wide breadth of knowledge. Like, I didn't grow up listening to country music, so I'm just have been listening to, you know,
I didn't really either, though.
when did you start?
Probably when I was a teenager, I got into the outlaw guys. I was never. There's country music though I'll go back to, and I like it because it reminds me of like my mom, what my mom liked.
Yeah.
Like I like Toby Keith. A lot of people shit on him, but I like listening to him.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's necessarily that I like it, but I think that it reminds me of like listening to that shit in the car with my mom when I was a kid.
That's got to be 10% of liking anything anybody likes, you know?
I got really sad one time. I think it was Olivia Newton-John just popped up on my car, and I remember my mom used to fucking love that song. And there's a level of like, I remember her singing it in the house, and I remember just there's this some music. It's just like you associate it with a level of innocence that you don't have anymore, and you weren't capable of having even like even when you're like fucking 8 or 9.
It's like a reminder of a moment that you were never even able to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly it. Yeah.
I guess, I mean, that's why music is so much more powerful than comedy, because it's like music is a moment, you know?
Well, music is the greatest form of art. It just is.
It just kind of is. And, you know, on this podcast, we don't like to speak objectively, but it's, if you took a poll of the entire world of like, what art evokes the most emotion from you?
Yeah.
It would obviously be music. And I think it's because it's probably just the most accessible.
Yeah.
Like,
let's do the art rankings. Number 1, music. I'm going to go number 2, movies. What do you think?
yeah, I mean, if we're talking about in the modern world and what, I guess, what's our framework?
In terms of like what,
Let's think.
Like
What's
what-
the goal of art? I would say the goal of art is to take an emotion and translate it to the viewer.
I also think that's a big part of it. I think another half of it is, I think art, I don't know. This is a theory. I think that art, in storytelling, creativity was, originally kind of invented to help, develop empathy.
Yeah, empathy and to yeah, I think just another way of saying it is just trying to explain the human condition.
Yeah.
And through that, understanding your own and others. Because, yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're listening to a sad country song and you feel the same way, you're feeling for yourself, but also through that, you're feeling a form of empathy.
Yeah.
Because you're saying like, oh, I feel you.
Yeah.
I feel you. I understand the way you feel. And you feel seen, but also the only way to do that is to see the artist first.
Yeah.
To acknowledge their pain and then to acknowledge it within yourself, which I think whether we like it or not is the only way to really feel empathy. I mean, like in that brain book I was reading, like empathy can bog down people a lot because when you feel pain for somebody else, your physical pain receptors go off in your brain.
Yeah.
So your brain doesn't delineate between physical pain and emotional pain, and it also doesn't delineate between physical, emotional, or somebody else's emotional pain. So you have to feel it. You're feeling it to understand that it's somebody else's first off. Okay, so with that framework, music first, then movies. And now, you know, those are so easy
Yeah.
to get into.
Yeah.
Now, can we say just movies and television? Can that just be one?
No,
Or
I
you
would say
think-
television is like lower down.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think it's like music, movies, literature.
And when you say, yeah, so literature, because my thought was poetry, but
Oh, poetry might be number 3.
But, sometimes people can find poetry to be very inaccessible. But I also think that is a stereotype, and it's mostly people stop. I think it's a form of anti-intellectualism that people get put upon them.
Yeah.
That's kind of unfair. I think most people in the world can access and enjoy poetry, but they're told that they can't.
Yeah.
They're told that it's an art that is purposely elusive, which I honestly think even the most, metaphor-filled figurative poem is still not trying to be elusive.
Yeah.
So I would say for myself, I don't know. The thing about a book, though, is like a novel can do what a poem does, but by speaking more directly and building it up over 200 pages.
I think I think short length, I think, really benefits art, I think.
I mean, I think economy of words, but definitely if you...
Because a song or a melody, like, those are short for the most part.
Yeah.
Even a symphony, that's like... It hits you very immediately. And movies hit you very immediately.
Yeah.
And poetry hits you very immediately. Where literature and television are purposefully, their scope is a lot wider ranging.
Okay, so yeah.
Even though
So would you put poetry third, literature fourth?
I think so.
Because I think they're close.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I think even the way, like a melody can be short, but a song can be long. And I think sometimes you start reading a book and within a paragraph, you're like, I feel this book.
Yeah.
And then if it's not redundant, you can comfortably go through 200 pages of it, feeling the same emotion and building upon it. But you might only cry at the very end, whereas with the poem, you can read it and sometimes you get a little shocked. And that's...
Yeah, well, I guess that goes into like paintings, I guess. Paintings stir a lot of emotions very immediately. And they stir even more emotions on deeper analysis.
I think that's the interesting thing about paintings. That also happens with poetry. Where I think a lot of people don't know what to do in a museum because they look at a painting and then they feel something immediately and they go, well, I feel that, so I guess I'm done.
Yeah.
But it is like, no, if you keep staring, then you get a second thing.
My roommate paints.
You get two paintings out of it.
My roommate paints. I don't really know that much about painting. He says that each brushstroke is an emotion and an idea.
I mean, I think he's right. I remember I had a thing where I went to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, and I decided to try and look at the paintings for kind of as long as I could, or when it felt like I had exhausted the painting. And I was looking at, I think it was Matisse, but it was somebody kind of like Van Gogh, sort of impressionist kind of thing. And he was doing staccato brushstrokes. So I started by looking at the painting, and then I asked the lady, I was like, what's a staccato brushstroke? And then she was like, it's a thicker brushstroke where there's like a lot of paint left on it. And it's like a sort of like a glob of paint that is not as like defined, as like trying to really draw a leaf. You do like a very thick piece. And so it has like physical dimensional texture. And yeah, it was interesting because you'd look at these impressionist paintings where, they're building a human or like a lake scene, but they're not using fine line details, but they're using all these sort of globs to then form into a whole. And so you look at it and you see the whole and you feel that. And then you look more and you go, oh, that brushstroke is its own leaf, or that brushstroke is its own part of the tree. And then, and then you realize, like, sometimes you look at these impressionist paintings that seem a little almost blurry, but the more you look at it, you go, everything's completely in focus, actually. This is a very readable photo. Everything you need is well defined and it's here, but what it takes is like looking at a painting for so long and adjusting your eyes until actually you'll start noticing depth and stuff. Because sometimes, especially with like, not like a realistic painting, it's hard to find depth and things like that. but then you'll actually see your eyes focus and you'll find things in the foreground and the background. And, you know, maybe it sounds stupid to describe, but the feeling itself is like you're actually finding a whole different painting in something you thought you already understood.
Yeah.
And I think it is tough because we do live in an age where there's a lot less patience for art. You know, I'd imagine it's hard to be a painter. I think that's maybe why so many young painters are copying like Basquiat.
Yeah.
Because on the surface level, it seems like he makes very enticing, recognizable images. But even his work requires a lot of looking to still see the scene he's doing. Because you might just see a face with big teeth, but really like, you know, it's a jazz musician on stage.
Yeah.
That's like going through a hard time. And if you looked long enough, maybe you could read that emotion and find it, you know, or you'd see a young man in crisis or something, as opposed to just like, ooh, big face.
Yeah.
But I think people see ooh, big face and go, I want to do big face too, because big face is good. And then they make big face and they go, well, I made the art because I made big face. And they go, yeah, but your face is nobody.
What's your big face?
Yeah.
It's big.
Yeah.
It's big, 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 big.
Yeah. Basquiat's faces was, you know.
It's a bunch of stuff. My big face. See the mirrors?
Yeah, there's just
Big,
a lot of white guys who are like, look at this big ass face. People are like, yeah, but whose face is it? And they're like, it's a crazy guy's face. And that's the only answer they have.
It's a goofball.
It's just a year-old regular goofball. Just a lovable goof. And they're like, yeah, that's not really the point of his art or
well,
art
actually, it
in
might
general.
be better than Basquiat because we all know a goof. We all know a goofball.
So, I don't know, after literature being fourth, would you say painting or would you say television?
I would say, I'm going to be honest, television is going to be pretty far down.
Yeah.
I would say maybe painting's fourth, and then literature is fifth. And then I would say...
Do you put painting before literature because of the immediacy of emotion conveyed?
Yeah, I think so.
That's fair.
Sixth, I'm going to give it to comic art. Comic books.
Comic books.
Comics, just...
What do you mean specifically? You talking about like newspaper strips, comic books?
I'm going to say it's going to be newspaper strip 6 and comic books 7th.
Okay. Why would you... Okay.
But I also think that it's close.
Where's stand-up for you? The very bottom?
No. Stand-up's not the bottom. I would say... All right. If we're going comic... What goes after?
Because I think if
stand-up might be 8.
I mean, if we're talking about immediacy...
Oh, no. I'm going to go television as 8, and then stand-up is 9th, and then acting is 10th. And...
But I don't know. I do feel like... I mean, I feel like it's a common comedian's trope to, you know, say comedy's very low, but I feel like sometimes if we're talking
like it's pretty high.
If we're talking about immediacy of emotion, I think, like, stand-up comedy can surpass television.
I think that might be true. Yeah. I think the best stand-up is probably...
Like, I guess let's just say in this conversation, we're talking about the best of every art.
If we're talking about the best... Okay, we're talking about the best. Then...
Like, the best music beats the best movie. The best movie
beats the
best poetry. The best poetry beats the best painting.
Yeah.
Which beats the best literature, which would beat...
I'm gonna. If we're doing the best, I'm gonna put literature 4th and painting 5th.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna put stand-up might be 6th.
I think it would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's comics.
Because it's almost, you would almost think that comedy with a human whose face and body...
Comics is one of the hardest ones, though. I think comics is... That's the thing with stand-up and comics. There's a similarity that they require like a lot of... They require a lot of other talents.
Like what?
You have to be good at acting with stand-up. You have to be able to observe. It kind of combines a lot of the other art forms. But with comics, you have to be able to draw, and you also have to be able to write.
We haven't talked about theater.
Theater, I think, is pretty low down.
What do you think makes it low down? You think the sort of how it's sometimes not always believable what you're watching?
I think theater's kind of I think there's stuff that theater can accomplish that other art forms, for the most part, can't because of their, you know, because of the proximity of the performers.
I feel a huge distance from theater.
Yeah, I think it's purposeful.
Whenever I watch theater, I'm just like, I guess I feel almost a little stupid or like I'm being an asshole, but every time I watch theater, I'm like, yeah, but that guy's not that guy.
That guy's Jeremy.
That's
fucking Jeremy up there.
Yeah, like...
You're not Macbeth, dumbass.
Yeah, like, we're in a black box theater off of Melrose. When you're done with this, you're going to go home and, like, drink a hazy IPA. You're not a man in the 40s.
Man, you just a 6'2" fucking lanky ass motherfucker that's got no problems.
You're not a cat on a hot tin roof.
Yeah, you're none of this.
You're a human. And it's like, it does feel like...
Your girlfriend has arm tattoos.
Yes. Yes. Her name's not Stella.
Yeah.
And you don't wear tank tops. And you're not even that bad of a guy. You're not a great guy.
No, you're not amazing, but you're also not, dog shit. You're just nothing.
You're kind of nothing. And so I find it hard
There's a type of guy, there's a type of guy, a white guy that you're like, I wish I could punch you, but I can't.
Yeah.
Because it's not allowed.
Because nothing you do is punchable, but it's not likable or it's not full of any kind of substance.
And you're a dork, but also for some reason, societally, I'm a bigger dork.
And maybe that's what it is too. If somebody's acting like a piece of shit in a play, I do know that they're a theater nerd. So once again, I want to say to any theater people, I know there's a lot of bias coming into this.
Yeah.
But if I see a guy who's supposed to be like some southern drunk and he's like, I'm a man who can't find a piece except in the bottle. I'm like, you're from the Pacific Palisades.
Yeah.
You're not this guy. And I guess it's like, if maybe I should go to a play and just challenge myself to be like, everything I'm seeing is real. But I also feel like if you have to do that challenge for an art, there's something wrong.
This is a hilarious episode to do, though. That's like, to be like, we're going to rank all the arts.
On a podcast, which has to be the lowest.
Yes. Oh, podcasting is the absolute... Podcasting is so low, it's actually objectively making the world worse every day.
I don't think it's an art, also.
I think it can be.
I think maybe it's a craft in the sense that you can get better at it and know what you're doing, but I don't really know if there's any artistic value or drive. Like, I don't know.
I think there is art in like some of Stern. There's a lot of Stern and Opie and Anthony and like the guys that they're influenced by. I don't like the podcasters that are influenced by it. I think WTF has some like artistic merit.
I don't know.
It's not like journalism. Journalism, that's another form of art we haven't really gotten into. Journalism can be very eye-opening and prophetic, and
it can.
I think there are podcasts that are very good and challenging, and I just don't listen to podcasts. I like. Do
you only listen to music in the car?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been listening to a lot of like 60s and 70s shit.
Like what?
I was listening to Pear Ubu in the car earlier.
What's that?
It's like kind of punk, but also just like kind of avant-garde, like rock music. Kind of incel rock. There was like a period of incel rock in the 70s. You could make an argument that I guess Iggy Pop, like for that first The Stooges album, is incel rock. I guess you could also say, but Devo's another like incel rock. I was thinking about this actually in the car, that incels, the biggest period for incels was the 70s and now.
What do you think about the 70s was?
I don't know, but they had art like Taxi Driver and shit. They had like movies like Taxi Driver.
I think the similarity would be that like the 60s had a lot of hopefulness of like, we're going to change, and then nothing did.
Yeah.
And then you have the 70s, which is just self-indulgence and cocaine and like still a lot of sex, but not like, oh, summer of love, we're free.
A lot of guys
It's
got
like,
back from war. Nothing turns you into a bigger incel than going to war.
yeah, you just look around, you go, everything is a fucking lie.
Yeah.
And I think like we didn't have the same thing, but I think millennials tried to have a push that was similar to the hippie movement. And then it once again failed and we went deeper into fascism. And then with like Gen Z, there's a similar sense of everything's fake and nihilism. And, like we don't have Studio 54, but we do have like a lot of kids our age who are living very surface level, going clubbing on TikTok, doing dances, and they're all hot and they're fucking. And then there's another group of guys like us who are not fun people and we're not the kind of people that are like, I just do it for the experience. We're not going paragliding.
Yeah.
So I think we're once again in a state where there's people that are like dancing at clubs, doing coke, and fucking each other. And then there's a whole other group. And they're doing that. We're both responding to the same system, which is things are hopeless and nothing's ever going to change. And so one group is getting fucked up on coke and fucking each other. And the other group is like really trying to figure out why that's happening.
Yeah.
While at the same time, like not getting their dicks wet. And so one art on one side is let's have fun, and one art on the other side is like things are bad and I feel bad.
It's interesting the like right wing aspect of incel culture, when a lot of the like promiscuous culture is based entirely off of it within white people. It's based entirely off of white supremacy, white based symbols. Like a lot of what's considered attractive in like amongst white people is just what's the whitest stereotype you could be. It's the whitest motherfucker. I'm gonna find the whitest motherfucker. I'm gonna suck his dick.
Yeah, so would you say that like the current like TikTok stars and stuff are like fulfilling that
Yes.
same narrative?
Yeah, I think so. I think incels just need to get into interracial dating. I think that would help them a lot.
Yeah, totally.
You kind of have to do that.
Yeah.
If you're a white guy that's not like white in the way that's accepted, you just got to be like,
And they would.
If they weren't racist.
But I don't think they even really are racist. I think they're racist as a reaction.
I do think, though, that when a lot of guys complain about women, they're not complaining about women. They're complaining about women of their own race. Because that's who they want.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you just got to be like, well, I'm not a D1 football player on this side, and I'm not a theater dork on that side, so that seems to be what is considered attractive, is you have to either be a football player or the gayest guy of all time.
You mean for a white guy?
Yes.
It's hard to, yeah, I mean, it is weird though, because everybody's gotten pussy.
Yeah.
So it's like, it is hard to draw those lines. But if we're talking about, I guess, the most attractive, but it's also so dependent on context of like, if you're a D1 football player in LA.
That won't necessarily get you like, it depends also what side of town you live on too.
Yeah.
Like if you live over at the west part of the town, you'd be cleaning up. But you live on the east part of the town, people will be like kind of afraid of you.
Yeah.
They'd want like a lanky like theater dork guy.
Yeah. I mean, it is funny though, because I'm not really even accusing you of this. I think it is interesting. It feels like whenever anybody talks about what people want, it seems like that immediately becomes not true, because at the end of the day, people respond to more deeper things than that.
I'm talking culturally. I'm talking like what's pushed into your face. You know?
Culturally, definitely. But then it's interesting because like that culture still can't.
But you can't talk about like individuals when you're like trying to get to the root of the problem, And what is the root of the problem? And it's just whiteness.
Yeah. But if we're talking about like mate selection, it's actually interesting how much like biology and stuff trumps culture. And I
don't necessarily agree though. I don't necessarily agree that that's true. I
Well,
think
like you're automatically more attracted to somebody whose like hormones are a similar scent to your relatives. So that's going to be more powerful than like, oh, this guy looks like the kind of like lanky white dude I like.
I guess that's true,
Because
but
it's
I
not even
also
your decision. It's a decision that's already made for
I
you.
think I think the thing with the nature versus nurture thing is I think that they coexist and
yeah, it's
they
definitely
kind of build on each other.
yeah, it's an intersection.
Yeah.
But I think like a lot of the cultural likes and dislikes flow from a biological place. Now, of course, the biology interacts with environment because it has to. It is the environment. But like even if you're into like lanky hipsterish dudes,
Yeah.
there's probably like a genetic or like epigenetic reason that those guys are more attractive to you.
It also might be just
You know?
a going back to the thing about your dad, where it's like a lot of these women are probably going for the opposite of their dad.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, becomes a type of like
I was trying to do
biology and stuff.
trying to do a joke about, because there's a joke right now about, anyway, I'm not going to tell on the pod, but basically the punchline is that the women that seem to be attracted to me are mostly Hispanic. And I was trying to write that I think that my attitude and my personality and my looks are more probably remind a lot of Hispanic women of their dad.
How so?
Well, I think me being boisterous and aggressive, but also slim, you know?
You think you have like I mean, you do sort of play around with like kind of an ironic machismo.
I don't even know how ironic it is, though. I don't think it is even that ironic.
Well, I think it's only
I think people assume it's ironic.
I don't think it's from a place of irony, but I think it becomes irony because you're aware of it and its fallibility and you make fun of it.
Somebody made a point. I remember somebody nailed something really hard about me in Nashville that I found to be very true out here, that people assume that I'm being more ironic than I actually am.
I mean,
and and because of that, like alt scenes accept me because they think that I'm being like, I'm joking around.
Well, I think there's an awareness to you.
Yeah.
I think that's what they mean, is that like all masculinity is a complete performance of an idea that's not totally real.
Yes.
You're performing it completely. And I think you perform it the same way as a really buff aggro guy who only talks about money and women performs it. I think the difference between you and that guy is that you have an awareness of its futility.
Yeah.
And I think you like to make jokes, and so you joke about that futility. So I think you feel the same urges as that guy, but when you feel those urges, you will perform them in a more comedic way than instead of fully buying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like
I guess
you want people to respect you and think you're tough and not fuck with you, but you also know that directly being aggressive will not get that.
Yeah.
So you use comedy to still hopefully get the same thing. So I think
a lot of the jokes that I make about it are essentially like, I may look this way, but I've experienced what you assume that big guy's experienced.
Yeah, and like me and you are both aware of the fact that we're not physically imposing.
Yes.
But we both also want to be respected, and I think because of maybe things we've been through, we both want people to not fuck with us at all.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking to ourselves, well, how do we do that? And so we go through stand-up, because not just stand-up, but comedy in general, because comedy can have an aggressiveness to it and an intimidation factor to it of I won't fuck with that guy because he can say something to me verbally that would make me look like a fool, which is the same way of I wouldn't go after this big buff guy because he could punch me and make me look like a fool. We just know we can't do that.
Yeah, I can't punch a motherfucker.
And so we go through that, So it's like, I think your friend is right in that people do think you're being more ironic, but I think the reason people think that is because, sure, you're performing the same masculinity, but you're doing it through humor. Yeah. And humor can serve two purposes of intimidation, but also disarming. Where
Yeah.
if you're making a joke about some awful masculine thought, you're at least telling the audience, I'm making this joke because I know this is funny, and it's funny because it's not real.
Yeah.
And performing something that's not real is the same as being a clown.
Yeah, that's true.
You're clowning masculinity. You're clowning yourself. You're making fun of yourself. You're defeating yourself. And through that, trying to find what is probably just more evolved form of masculinity. I think we'd be wrong to think we're really trying to escape it.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, we want what the most misogynistic, money-grubbing pussy hound wants. But we want to do it in a way that is not hurting other people or intimidating other people.
I also think I have a bleaker perspective on it too, that of it like I know what those guys want isn't satisfying.
Yeah, and it's so what,
I know
you're not
that
go
the majority of life is not satisfying. The majority of life isn't bad or good. It's neither.
Yeah, I think those guys believe in a kind of stability that we can't.
Yeah.
I think if you went into those guys' lives, you would find that they probably grew up in relatively stable places.
Yeah.
Or maybe the opposite, and they've responded to that by still believing in a type of stability they could get through stocks and whatever.
It is interesting, yeah. It is, I do think it is interesting, the notion of like guys that get out of the hood, like, I mean, metaphorically, is people associate that are not from that area. Most people are not. With the guys they've met that have gotten out of the hood, who, there's a lot of different factors as to why that might be, that aren't just purely this guy, like, actually did, Like, this guy, did he get it through just his actual mindset and shit? And it's like, there's a little bit of that, but there's a lot of other stuff going into that,
Do you mean like he got out of the hood, like not just because of his mindset, but because he was also lucky to have like a counselor at a school who
I think
pushed him to do that, and he had the type of brain that would respond to that? And
luck is, I guess, the key word.
Yeah.
A lot of it's luck.
Yeah, I think it's
a lot of
luck.
It's just you coincidentally, like, because I read a lot. I read a lot when I was a kid, and if I didn't read, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'd be fucking shooting smack in my fucking arm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I think that's my biggest gripe with people, is not understanding that they've completely lucked into being who they are, or unlucked into being who they are, and that the agency they have is really little to none.
I think one thing I've been doing a lot with material is I've been trying to write jokes that are like, you think things are this way, like the majority of people think things are this way, but if you actually saw it, you'd know it's not.
Yeah.
It's all as fluid as the rest of life.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to write about that too. I get really angry at people's ability to look at things so simply. Like when I was doing on the street fundraising, I was trying to stop gun violence, and a woman was like, well, it's obviously not something we can fix through the law. It's a Christian issue, and people need to accept God. And I said to her, I go, a lot of criminals shooting each other, because that's what most gun violence is. It's not mass shootings. It's young men without support systems who get a hold of guns and shoot each other. I told her, I go, most of those guys believe in God.
Yeah.
If you ask most of those guys, do you think there's a God? They'll say yes. It's very few gang members that are fucking atheist.
Yeah.
They believe in God. God does not save them from violence. In fact, God is often something that helps rationalize the violence. You make a deal with it. You either go, I'm going to hell and I don't care, or you believe that your violence is justified through God, which is usually what you see with right-wing people. White right-wing people usually think God is forgiving of their violence. I think when you see people of color that believe in God, they might, and they're doing violent acts, they might reckon more with the fact that they'll be punished.
Yes.
I don't think white people reckon with the fact of their own punishment. I think they use God to rationalize it, thinking that he will reward them for what their violence, which they view as a sacrifice.
I think if you grow up within a certain economic status, it's hard to actually become it's like hard to actually be Christian, to like actually really have that be a thing that motivates your life, you know?
But
I think that's why the most Christian guys are the guys that came out of prison.
Yeah, I think most people, though, that believe in God would be of a lower socioeconomic status.
I think now, but I don't think that's true of the past. I think we live in a very secular society at this point. I think it's very interesting the way that the right wing has become secular. It's because once the right wing becomes secular, then their God becomes money.
I think the right wing, though, is still predominantly Christian.
I think that it's when I say secular, I mean I don't think that that's the thing they're pushing. I don't think that's the reasoning.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll give you that. Like, I don't know if anybody really believes in God.
Not anymore.
Because none of the way they seem to act, most people seem to just exploit God for their own ideas and justifications for their actions.
I think you don't really believe things a lot of times. I think a lot of people, you don't really believe things if you don't need them.
But I think because that book I was reading, like, monotheistic gods that punish you, that are aware of your actions, became popular when we started living in really large societies where you couldn't police everybody. If you live in like a small tribal community, those communities don't really believe in gods that punish people because they punish each other because they're aware of everybody and all of their infractions. When you live in somewhere like New York City or LA where there's millions of people and not everybody can be policed is when you start believing in monotheistic all-seeing gods because you need something over the human awareness that will actually push people to do the right thing, which I think a lot of like right-wing people believe in because they see a lot of bad stuff that's not being stopped. And so the comfort they have is that, God will punish those people.
I think the politicians' real God is power, though.
I'm not talking about the politicians. I'm talking about the people.
The people?
The people. The people that are scared, living in a big, scary world.
Yeah.
They believe that there is something above that is aware of all the infractions. And
I think, in certain situations, if you're in certain situations, it's kind of dumb to not believe in that.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what, and most people do. Most people do believe in that in a large, big, scary world because they need something to hold on to because the world around them is not stable. The world around them is not.
Uncle Carl is on meth, and he beats his wife all the time.
And he's not going to,
Yeah, he's not. God doesn't like him.
But God sees it, so they feel better about that, And then, then it becomes this thing where some people, I think a lot of the right wing, the extremist right wing, feel as though they're messengers for God, that they're in a war between good and evil.
Yeah.
If you talk to really hardcore Trumpers, they believe in God. They believe that there is evil from the Democratic Party and from the globalists and the elites or whatever, that those people are working through the devil. A lot of those beliefs come back to God and the devil, where they don't even look at Democrat and Republican. They look at the devil and God. And they're like, the devil's working through the Democratic Party. God is working through the Republican Party. And that's what will drive people to do such violent or extremist things, because they think everything in front of us is bigger than this, And then maybe a lot of Democrats who are more so atheists will look at the storming of the Capitol and be like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You just stormed the capital of our country. But they go, this is bigger than some fucking building.
Yeah.
This is God and the devil. And like most of the troops in America that go to the Middle East are right-wing extremists. They have pastors, only Christian pastors come and give them talks about their war between good and evil. They've told a lot of our troops that the Arabs they're fighting are the manifestation of the devil. And they have patches on their fatigues that are references to the Crusades. And a lot of people that fought in Middle Eastern wars, like in Iraq and stuff, believed that they were waging a modern crusade.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that most of the people that we're dealing with in this country are acting more on a spiritual level than really a grassroots thing. And that, not grassroots, but brass tacks kind of level. So that's why when you talk to a lady where you're like, hey, you know, if we had safer gun laws, we might have less violence in the streets, their immediate answer is no.
Yeah.
Because they go, everything down here is trivial. It's about making right with things up there. But then the problem is there's nothing up there.
Yeah.
There never has been, there never will be. It's only been down here. But down here, I realize, is too scary for people to investigate. That's why most people don't want to believe that there's no free will.
Yeah.
Because to believe that is to actually investigate your own brain functioning. There's so much down on the ground that is so complex and amazing and interesting, but people don't want to do it. They just want to look up and get one answer. And like through reading his books about understanding brain functioning, I've, for the first time in my life, understood gratitude and luck and everything being kind of perfect in the way that everything has led to the moment we're in right now.
Yeah.
And that gives me gratitude. But that just takes more patience than going, God made it and we're good. And people just don't want to do that because at the end of the day, there's so much more stability in everything happening as God's plan than everything happening as the result of what came before it. The latter feels much more, it feels better to me because it makes sense. I go, okay, the world makes sense now. Maybe it's not perfect, but it makes sense. But I don't think a lot of people want to make sense of the world. I think they want to feel okay about it.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to have a knowledge of the things around them. They want to have an understanding and an understanding that makes them feel comfortable with what's happening. So when they see babies dying in Gaza, they can say it's okay because God wants it.
The problem with knowledge and perspectives is it makes everything so much bleaker and sadder. Like, it's easy to just, if you're a nihilist, if you believe in nothing, everything doesn't seem so bad, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If you believe in shit, this shit seems awful. Fucking awful.
Yeah, I think definitely. But I also think when you start to look at things in a little more materialistic view of this is happening because that happened before it and so on, is you start thinking, well, okay, so this is the way things have been created. Things can then change.
Yeah.
I find the Christian view to actually be bleaker than a materialist view that believes in a chaotically emerging system. Because
that's essentially what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah. I think Christians are very bleak people. And I think it's very funny because one thing that maybe I've talked about on this podcast before that really upsets me is they go, oh, so some people don't believe in God. Well, then what? Life has no meaning? And what upsets me about that is, okay, so let's say you marry a woman. You fall in love with a woman, you marry her, you have a child. You both love that child. You support your wife through the pregnancy. The child is born. And then 2 years later, the child dies. If God doesn't exist, are you saying that meant nothing?
Yeah.
Because that's what they have to agree to. If you're saying that with no God, there's no meaning, then what you're also agreeing to is that your child dying would mean nothing if God did not exist.
Yeah.
I find so much meaning in the material facts of life, in evolution, in societal evolution, in the human connections that we make, in the way our brains respond and don't respond to things, is more meaning than we can even process at one time. And I think that's the thing. I think there's so much meaning and emotion to process that people would rather ascribe it to a God than actually investigate how meaningful life without a God is.
Yeah.
Life without a God is infinitely more amazing and meaningful than life with a God. Because life without a God means that the Big Bang happened, evolution happened, the dinosaurs existed for longer than humans will probably ever exist and then died, and we live on the same earth as them, and somehow we've brought to this level where we're now podcasting. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is beautiful and amazing. And people go, well, how could it work without a God? And you go, it works because it works.
Yeah.
everybody has this idea of, they go, oh, the Earth is perfect. I go, it's not perfect. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And people go, well, how could, they say like, oh, we're the only planet that can support life. How could that happen without a God? I go, it happened because it happened.
Yeah.
Life is here because we happen to be on a planet that can support life.
Yeah, yeah.
And
we wouldn't be here if it didn't.
We wouldn't be here if it didn't. It's the simplest answer possible. It's like all the things you think are perfect just wouldn't exist if they didn't. Things exist because they do, and they don't exist because they don't. We're here because we're here. That is the most beautiful idea I could possibly imagine. That you go, wow, nothing's perfect, nothing's destined, but everything is. And that in and of itself is amazing because it didn't have to be. It could equally be nothing, but it's something. And without a God, everything is so complex and interconnected and all together at once, moving in the same direction. The way a tree moves in the same direction, where it flowers differently, but it's all moving in the same direction. It's all moving within each other and connected. That's the only way I see the earth fully connected. With a God, what? What, he made us and we're here and it's all because he wanted it to? I see no evidence of that, and I see no reason to believe in that. It's bleak as fuck.
Yeah.
It's so much more bleaker to believe that everything in human history has happened because somebody above us wanted it to, than to believe that everything happened because it happened, which also means that in the future, good things can happen because we choose good things to happen. Christians are, I think, the most ungrateful, uninterested, and like death-loving people I've ever met. I think it's actually a sickening way to think. And I don't think they're bad people. I understand why you could believe it, but I am kind of sickened by the core Christian idea that without God, there is no meaning.
So how about this? Dinosaurs, they have like really small brains, like peanut-sized brains.
Is that true?
Yeah, like the T-Rex.
Okay.
How big do you think their penises are?
Probably bigger than ours.
No way.
Yeah.
Bigger than mine?
I don't think you need a big brain to have a big dick.
That's fucking fucked
I will
up.
say, though, that usually, I guess the bigger the brain, your penis, it's probably in a bigger body, which would be in a big... Like, horses might have bigger brains than us. Dolphins have bigger brains. I don't know if they have bigger penises, though. They might have longer. I don't think they're girthy, though.
Oh, fucking little... Yeah. Yeah, those little long-ass fucking nothing dicks. Couldn't please my woman.
Well, dolphins rape. They're known if you're caught in a crevasse with a dolphin.
So do fucking celebrities.
Yeah.
Celebrities and dolphins.
Stay away from them.
Somebody threw me in a pool with a bunch of celebrities and dolphins. I don't know who to swim to. I don't know who to swim to for help.
Just get to the edge. Just get out of the pool.
I'm in the most dangerous pool I could possibly be in.
If you get invited to a Hollywood party where there will be dolphins, that is a trap. You are walking into probably the most dangerous situation I could possibly imagine.
Yeah, there's probably dolphins around Epstein's Island, just trying to swim onto land.
Yeah.
Get some of that pussy.
That's everything can seem nice until you really look into it. Because if somebody told you there's a cool private island with cool celebrities and there's dolphins around, you'd go, oh, that must be so fun. But then you go, celebrities and dolphins have a pretty high rate of taking pussy.
Yeah.
And you're on an island where nobody can find you.
And that's why there's no God. We did it.
You think God wanted that to happen?
Oh, yeah, you think God wanted to God was up there creating dolphins and celebrities going, we gonna make the biggest predators of all time.
It's such a sad thing to believe in. It's such a sad thing to believe in.
Yeah, get this shit out. So we're gonna make a motherfucker that runs the ocean and a motherfucker that runs America with their entertainment. We gonna make propaganda machines that have sex with people without their consent.
Just even if you don't imagine it as a god, you should imagine it as a guy. If you look at all the awful things in the world and you go, that guy, like, okay, how about this? Instead of thinking of God, think of the president.
Yeah.
Look at everything awful happening in Gaza, and you go, the president is fine with that. It's the same rules for God. You can hate the president. It's easy to hate the president because he's a human.
What if Trump controlled the heaven? That'd be crazy. Every shit be gold.
It would look, it would look nice. But
I mean, hey, you may not like Donald Trump as president, but Donald Trump is president of heaven.
there would be slaves in heaven. But there'd be a lot of gold.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if Trump was president of heaven, dolphins getting in.
I think
even though they should not.
Yeah.
The dolphins should not be going to heaven.
No, dolphins go to hell. If you go to hell, you hear a lot of dolphin chirps. The water it's full of lava dolphins that fuck you.
Oh, great. I was a dolphin, and now I got to go hang out with all the celebrities.
Yeah. That's all hell is. It's just fucking...
It's dolphins at a P. Diddy party.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just fucking Humphrey Bogart and dolphins. That's who you got down there. That's who you got.
Of all the hells you could have walked in, you walked into mine.
Mm-hmm. He does all his lines from his old movies and then fucks you.
Yeah, he's like, you remember that? And you're like, well...
Not really.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, he doesn't understand. You're like, time has passed. You're not
the biggest guy ever right now. He's down in hell, like, so excited about all the people coming.
Yeah.
He's like, they're going to be starstruck.
You must be a fan. You're like, honestly, Humphrey,
Also, we're not allowed to smoke inside anymore.
Yeah. I saw the Maltese Falcon that I think you were in. He goes, yeah. I go, I mean, yeah, I can't even remember which guy you played, to be honest.
I think probably the main guy? Was it the main guy? Was it the Falcon?
Were you the Falcon? I don't know. Honestly, Humphrey.
Oh, it's Casablanca.
Humphrey, I don't know how to explain this to you, but in 60 years, you're going to sound like every other guy you're in a movie with, and nobody's going to understand why you're a good actor anymore. Because it kind of requires cultural context to the way you're acting seems cartoonish to everybody now. So if you're the best at that, nobody can tell because you just sound like everybody else. And that's his hell.
Yeah.
Is realizing that...
Yeah. Humphrey Bogart's the only guy not getting tortured down there. He's just sitting and they introduce... When everybody comes to hell, they're like, hey, look, check out. Really cool, right?
But they don't tell people his name. So he's sitting in a hell chair and he's like, hey, and they're like, who is this? Is this
Are you my great-grandpa?
Is this a president from the 1800s? Are you my great-grandpa? He's like, no, I'm one of America's biggest stars. And you're like, what are you, Hitler? I don't know. What are you talking about?
Ulysses S. Grant?
Are you Ulysses S. Grant? He's like, no, he's in heaven. I don't know.
We got Robert Lee down here.
We do have Robert E. Lee, though. If you're a Civil War buff, we got half of the Civil War down here. We got half of them are down here. You can guess which side, but they're all down here.
Apparently, yeah, they sent them down here. They're like, hey, I heard you love the South. You about to go Southern. You about to go with the most South place you could be.
Yeah, hell is the South. It is funny to imagine fighting in the Civil War, which is just like, like you're like infected the whole time and like you're like killing your cousins, but like you're a Confederate and you think you're fighting for what's right. And then you get shot and you just immediately end up in hell. And you're like, oh my God.
Oh no.
The last 4 years were so awful. And now I'm in hell forever? And you talk to the devil and you're like, were we wrong? And he's like, of course.
You were so wrong. And also, wait, you're never even going to get to experience country music, which I know you guys are going to love.
Country music is coming.
But you ain't never going to hear it.
You got a little bit of it.
This is hell.
This is hell.
There ain't no country music down here. We got rap. We transported rap down here. They make them sit in a room and listen to rap all day.
Yeah. And we're both fans of rap, but if there's any music bumping in hell, it's probably rap. And I think it's just because rap is one of the few musics that can be excited. It can excitedly talk about a really bad situation.
Wouldn't that be funny if all the rappers are in heaven, but rap is the only music playing in hell?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of rap is like, you know where you are right now? You're in a piece of shit kind of place. Or it's rap and Guns N' Roses.
Oh, yeah.
Guns N' Roses is definitely hell music. Well, also,
They'd be playing Paradise City over and over again, and the devil be like, hey, check this out. This is sarcastic.
Yeah.
Because Paradise City's up north with the Yankees.
It's also funny if all of AC/DC goes to hell. They're like, what did we do wrong? They're like, that's all you sang about, is how much you love hell. Aren't you excited to be here?
We brought out the whole highway, so you go... Oh, you thought it was really weird how you woke up on a highway.
You really have to not believe in hell to be AC/DC. if you believe in hell, you would never be AC/DC. You'd be like, we can't write this. That would be awful. We'll go to hell.
I don't want to go there.
That's a one-way ticket to hell. We're talking about how we want to go there and deserve to go there.
The devil meets AC/DC like, hey, heard you guys are super fans.
And they're like, no. And he's like, man, I thought somebody would be excited to be down here. AC/DC's not?
Turn up the rap.
You guys like heaven? Well, you should have made that clear.
All right, bump up. We got a King Von concert in a couple hours.
King Von is...
King Von has a residency down here in hell.
Yeah, the devil's like, honestly, King Von is kind of becoming the new devil. That guy likes killing so much, it's kind of weird. He likes it the way guys like pussy.
Yeah, King Von's been going over to parts of hell and being like, you guys on the wrong street.
Yeah, he's set tripping in hell. Yeah, King Von built O-Block in hell, which some people in hell are actually scared to go to. Because we have the 7 layers, but we also have O-Block.
Anyway, I got to get to work.
You got to get to work, but thanks for tuning in. I hope you loved stand-up and art.
Yeah, hell yeah.